kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News. The lovely Chewy son. Oh, there he is, jumping in as we. Do you want to tell people what you were doing? You had a little bit of an urgent situation to remedy very quickly.
I tell you what, there is no creature on earth that is more insistent than a dog that wants to go outside. And then the flip side of that coin is there is no creature so unhurried, so blissfully relaxed as a dog that is now outside.
Very good. Entertain the crew for a minute while I blow my nose.
I haven't got the nipple tassels. I can't do the swingies, and nobody wants to see that anyway.
Back. Just like that. Hey team. Well, how are you this weekend, Chewy? How was your weekend, mate? What's going on? I'm realizing that every Monday I'm coming with a bit of a movie review, and I've got another one for today to tell us about as well.
I made a bit of a fool of myself this weekend.
Doesn't sound like you.
I've been really looking forward to seeing a band, singer, songwriter kind of band play. A guy called Freddie Fudpucker.
Yep.
And he's in town at the moment and hasn't been in Dunedin for years and years and years and years. And he's playing at a new venue here in town called Pearl Diver. And I had in my head that it was Saturday. So I went down and lovely new venue, sat down, had a beer, looked around. There was bugger all people there. Oh, this isn't going to be a very good show. There's not a lot of people here. Had my second beer, was about to ask where the band was, and then saw a poster behind the bar. I got my dates wrong.
Oh.
So I had a lovely couple of beers by myself at a pub for no reason.
Well, there's never no reason. No reason. There's never no reason here. Wait, so did you miss it, or is it still to come?
No, it's coming up. It's this coming weekend.
Oh, there you go. I found a little gem. I mean, every time I talk about movies, you tend to have seen them, Chewy. But I was looking through Netflix over the last week, and I found a little gem of a movie. And if you've got Netflix, it's on there, so I would welcome you to check it out. It's called Captain Fantastic. Great little movie.
Oh, yes. This came out a few years ago.
Yeah, 2016.
I haven't seen it, but it came out a few years ago.
So Viggo Mortensen, of course, Aragon, as we know him here in New Zealand, he's basically a wild man that lives out in the bush and has his kids out living in the bush with them. And through a particular tragic event, he's kind of drawn back into society and has to kind of start to figure his way around society. And his kids, like one of the first scenes is quite funny when the kids come into society. They're like, is everybody sick? What's wrong? And the dad goes, what do you mean? He goes, they're all so fat, because these kids have been living off the land, running up and down hills, and you know, that's who they are, sort of thing. But really, really nice, sweet movie. If you want to check it out, I would check it out. I mean, I did check it out. So I'm giving it you my recommendation, Captain Fantastic. Pretty funny, pretty lighthearted, couple of pretty serious themes in there. But you know, they're pretty good. It's a pretty good flick, actually. So I wanted to give it my recommendation, Chewy, if that's all right with you.
My watching from the weekend is I've decided to rewatch The Orville. I don't know if you've seen that.
That's not the series with Seth MacFarlane, is it?
Yeah, Seth MacFarlane's basically love letter to Star Trek.
Right, yeah.
And has just ended up being like just as good as Star Trek. And
nice.
I loved it when it came out, and there's been like big gaps between seasons, and there's a lot of will they, won't they about season 4. There's a change of studios and all sorts of stuff going on. And I just thought, I wonder if I remember this show. You know, are my fond recollections accurate? And I think they were even like I've watched most of the first season now, and I'm just like, oh shit, this is like a great show, and I know that the first season's the weakest of them.
Right, cool.
So yeah, just really enjoying sitting down and doing a rewatch. And as Citizen Gold there says in the chat, yep. Very, very strong rumours that Seth MacFarlane's got a season 4 supporter.
One other thing, as has been reported the world over, was the most exciting weekend ever in the Octagon this weekend gone by. Did you see this, Chewy?
Yeah, look fucking scary.
So this is the thing that's scary, right? So you see this truck here, Fano. This has come the road up behind the octagon, right? So this is the big statue of Robbie Burns. The road that goes off to the left here is a slope. You know, it's not incredibly steep, but it's a pretty steep road, and it goes straight away and it goes straight back up. So you got a road that comes down and it ends right above where Robbie is, right, and then the octagon starts. And a truck. They said it might have been a medical event for the driver. I haven't heard anything more beyond that.
It's not.
It's not.
They've cleared that.
Came down. Oh, it's fail brakes. Came down the hill, straight just to the right of old Robbie. And here's the one scary thing I realised. Look at the grass, Chewy. There is no indentation in the grass, so that means this truck flew over this part of it and landed. That might be the first point of impact there. And how wide would that be, Chewy? 6 or 7 meters, maybe 8, give or take.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was definitely hauling. You can see where he's landed just in front of the bricks, I think.
Yeah. So this is the octagon, and I've actually been past it. I was going to drive past it today. So it's stuck under the thing. It's going to be a pretty big cleanup job. One of the trees may be damaged. It certainly was reports it was damaged, and we'll have to see how that goes. But when I kind of realised, oh my gosh, there is no impact on the grass, it just made me think. So there's the top view. So that's coming down the hill, and you see the truck went straight across here. There's skid marks just there, obviously. Just missed Robbie, and flew. Scary. I saw. It's hilarious when we talk about where we get. Oh, that's the hill there. So there's a good showing of the coming down Stewart Street. So all the way down here. This is a left turn into the octagon. So those cobbles will be the start of the octagon. So it came down that hill. Brakes were out, straight across the road, and there you go. Perfect little thing, and down there. Oh, so when I realized there again, look, see, nothing, no indentation in the grass at all. So that truck flew across the grass, and look how big it is. It's like a 12, 16 wheeler, and then impacted just here. I don't know what these steps are going to look like, but
I reckon
this is the thing.
Just in front of the bricks.
This is the thing.
That's the slope. That's the gradient too, by the way.
This is the thing that I realized when we get our news media sources from. The first time I heard it, Chewy, was when I saw something on TikTok. And I went, oh. And then I went from TikTok to the ODT, and then I caught up with the story. So, yes, big news in Dunedin this weekend was a flying truck, literally and figuratively, flying down the hill and then flying over the grass. Okay. A couple of things before we get going tonight. I wanted to let you know we are going to drop some merch this week. I'll let you know what's going on. Have a look at this. What do you think of this one, team? Hey, you like that buffer styling? You like it?
Nice.
She's up there. What we thought we'd do is we thought we'd do a bit of a fundraiser. We haven't decided which charity in Gaza, but probably a Doctors Without Borders or one of the ones supplying food through or something. We're going to support one of the charities within Gaza. We'll do some more. And as you know, if you haven't heard so far, Buffer, you guys are all behind, what Buffer's all about. Professor Margaret Mutu, when she came on the show, she talked about non-Māori being a buffer between Māori and the Crown. And so that was where we got the word from. So we're going to do these tops. They would have been on sale today, except my printer hasn't come back to me yet with some mock-ups. So we'll get the mock-ups done first, and I'm trying them on a couple of different coloured hoodies. They could just be on a white one, white or black, but I'm also trying them out like on a tan colour and like on a grey like this colour. I thought it looked quite cool on a grey top like this, Chewy. So once I see the mock-ups, we'll put them out there, and we will we'll raise some money for both Gaza. We'll give them a percentage of the profits, and we'll also make a bit of cash for ourselves. Speaking of that, I want to say a bit of cash for ourselves. I want to say a huge thanks to our patrons, and thank you for being on board. I told you last week we'd have some patron news this week. So this is the part of the conversation we're going to have about that. Thank you to our patrons for being a part of what we do. The last time, since we put the billboard up last time, Gold here has upgraded from producer to senior producer. Aidan has come back on board as a coffee runner. Modi orders in there as well. I think that's all on this page. Over here, I think Joe Hawkins and Debbie and Deb Hay upgraded. Says the Shorts on there, Douglas Hall's on there. These are all new people who have been coming on board. We really very much appreciate what you do. You really help us genuinely do what we want to do, and you help us pay a few of the bills. What we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit, we're not quite having a, what do you call it, a thankathon, a telethon, but we are going to do a bit of a focus this week on trying to pick up some more patrons. And we're going to encourage you that if you've been around for a while and you've thought about doing it, and you are yet to do it. That's fine. We can't force anybody. We're not trying to force you, but we're just going to use this week as a bit of a way to focus on perhaps trying to get to 250 patrons. We've currently got about 200. So we want to try and pick up 50 patrons this week. I mean, it's a lot. It would be, we're going to do 4 shows. So it would be 12 a day over those 4 shows. But we're going to aim for another 50 patrons. So what you're going to see is you're going to see this little clip that I'll show you. On the end of all of our clips this week, you will see and hear this. Kia ora again, whānau. The clip you've just watched is brought to you today by our patrons. If you want to be a part of what we do, if you want to get behind what we're doing, if you're enjoying our content and wanting to share our content, then maybe you would consider being a patron to Big Hairy News. Head to www.patreon.com/Big Hairy News to sign up to one of our levels and be a patron. At this point, we are only a listener and viewer supported show. It all comes down to you guys. If you feel like jumping on board to help, then head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Hooroo. So that's going to be on the end of all the clips and stuff this week as well. We don't want to bang you around the head too much about it, but just to let you know, we are going to focus on it a little bit. We did tell you last week that we're getting quite close to sort of being able to turn this into something that kind of pays both me and Chewy a little bit for our time. It won't be the equivalent of anything full-time or anything, but a little bit. So we're giving you the opportunity to buy into the product that you like, because that's what we're looking to do. And we are going to focus. When I say focus, we'll mention it this week and it'll be in the clips. That's about as far as we'll go. You want to say anything to that, Chewy?
Yeah, I just want to highlight something here. Look, if you can't afford to contribute to Patreon, that is absolutely fine.
100%.
Like, there is heaps of things that don't cost you anything that can help us grow and help us put our feelers out to people that are able, share our stuff around, comment on it. I've seen lots of people sort of dropping links into conversations when we're talking about a subject that's also doing the rounds in the news and that sort of thing. Do that. I don't want anybody sort of feeling obligated to drop money that they can't afford, especially these days. If you're able to, awesome, we welcome it. If you can't, we just love having you here.
Yeah,
we love seeing the same names pop up week after week after week, and just, as Pat loves to say, be our advocates and put us out there in front of more eyeballs.
And even this week, it would be even better to put our stuff out there in front of more eyeballs, because that trailer is going to be playing at the end of every clip. So if our clips and stuff get shared around more this week than they normally do, then that's going to get the Patreon message to more people as well. So be our advocates, be a part of the team, be a part of our salespeople, and help get the word around there. As we are super close to being able to sort of turn this from a hobby into should we say a part-time job, Chewy? From a hobby to a part-time job, and then after that comes the full-time job. And you would have noticed in the clip it specifically said right now we're funded by. We do have a plan for advertisers. We do have a plan for sponsors and stuff as well, but it all takes time. And when you're just one little bearded boy kind of trying to drive all of this along with doing the cuts and setting up the interviews and editing this, it's there's a lot to be done. Yep. So that was all we're going to get to today. That was all. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's the latest.
There's a lot tonight, by the way. There's a lot because I don't know if you got a chance to see the whole thing, Chewy, but the Q&A conversation with the Israeli ambassador. We could have just done an hour and a half show.
God, no, I haven't seen that.
Yeah,
I haven't even seen anything about that.
Good. Well, then you'll be a good person to check it out, because the actual Q&A interview was about 42 minutes, 43 minutes. So that was just on Q&A, let alone how much we pontificate over things we think are important. Could have been the whole show.
With at the risk of looking too far behind the curtain, Pat, did they broach the subject that the Israelis did a drone strike on a playground and killed 11 kids last week?
No, they did not. But a bunch of the
probably would have asked them about that one.
Well, yeah, but look, he talked quite a lot about children dying, so maybe not that specific conversation. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I've already got 6 clips. We may not get to all of them. There was a lot. We could have 16 clips, but. So we're gonna get to that tonight, and we're also going to have a look at Chlöe Swarbrick this morning, speaking to David Seymour about the Waitangi Tribunal. This is a really interesting this government seems to, I don't know if it is this government as opposed to ACT and maybe New Zealand First, but of course that is this government, just basically wanting to say the Waitangi Tribunal is worth nothing. Like it's not, we don't answer to it. We don't have, it's almost like a pissing match with these politicians kind of going, well, why should we have to talk to them? We've been voted in. In fact, that's pretty much exactly what David Seymour says, as opposed to looking at the tribunal as a tool to help shape legislation that then a government can pass. It's not a necessity, in and of itself. They're not a court and they're not a system for legislation, but as a kind of seat of learning, for want of a better word, of the ability to have a broader conversation, see a perspective from the Māori world view as a part of legislation. But this government just seems to be going, nah, don't wanna. Why should I? It really does feel quite petulant. That'll be a bit later as well. But as I said, we've got a lot, so we should probably get into it. Because the other thing we want to talk about first, Chlöe, is, of course, the lovely 3 strikes law is coming back. 3 strikes is coming back because, as we know, it doesn't work, it serves no purpose, but it gives a good bumper sticker, and it makes a government look like they are being hard or tough on crime. From TVNZ this evening.
The coalition government getting tough on crime.
Our goal here is to incarcerate violent offenders. I don't care whether they're Māori or non-Māori. They're coming off our streets. I make no apologies for putting in place this legislation because I think it's really important.
But it's not a new policy, rather a political tug of war. National introduced it in 2010, Labour scrapped it in 2022, only for Christopher Luxon and the ACT Party to revive it once more.
And that's getting serious, repetitive, recidivist, violent and sexual offenders off our streets and behind the bars.
But many argue it doesn't work.
I don't think you're going to come across it.
I like when they say many argue. Experts, academics, people who work in the industry, those kinds of
overseas experience.
Yeah, those kinds of randos. That there are one or two who don't think it works, like all the experts and the people who have done this before. Those people, you mean?
A defendant who stops and thinks, wait, if I commit this crime, I'm going to be liable for a 3rd strike.
The new revised legislation adding strangulation and suffocation to the offence list, while also offering a sentence discount of up to 20% for some early guilty pleas. The law will also only apply to sentences of more than 2 years after it was found some lower level offenders were getting unfairly caught up under the law.
Some cases came to be highlighted.
It's not good policy, and ultimately there's no evidence to suggest that it actually reduces violent offending.
In 2018,
So that's the problem, Mr. Hipkins. You have to remember, this government doesn't use, in fact, often plainly rejects the evidence. So that's where you're falling short. And as per usual, we will see that shortly again with Chlöe Swarbrick and David Seymour. One does vibes, as Chiwilo says. The other one does research, data and trial and error.
Justice Ministry report found that in the 8 years the law had been in force, it was having no obvious effects in reducing serious crimes.
So just remember, as we look at Christopher Luxon's O-face, New Zealand's research into when we've used it last time says it doesn't work. So it is a bunch of rando experts from around the world, but New Zealand, looking at when New Zealand did this, says it doesn't work. But of course,
what?
Good
8 years.
Yeah.
8 years. So hardly a flash in the pan. And I would hazard a guess that our prison population probably ballooned around that time as well.
Right.
Because that seems to go hand in hand with every country that rolls out 3 strikes, their prison population explodes.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we've seen different pieces of advice. There's been advice from previous examples of where...
Yeah, stutter. You know this team, we've said this before. When he stutters, he's getting caught up over not wanting to reveal the truth. Is he quite lying? I don't know, but he's trying to figure out a way around the obvious narrative to try and paint what he wants to say. So let's just have a look at that again, because what he's talking about is where the expert commentary is coming from.
Of advice. There's been advice from previous examples of where, when we had it before, and likewise we've even seen examples from overseas jurisdictions like California.
And does that advice specifically say that this will lead to a reduction in crime?
Well, let
The
Nicole talk that one.
advice that I've seen
You gotta pass that hot potato. You
That
gotta
is
get that
cool.
fucking hot potato. I
Even
don't
you'll
wanna answer
appreciate.
this one.
Even you'll
Jesus.
appreciate this, Chewy. When we're talking about sports ball, that is called a hospital pass. We'll see it again, shall we?
A reduction in crime.
Well, let
The
Nicole talk that one.
advice that I've seen is that over the last 5 years, we've had over a 30% increase in serious violent crime in New Zealand.
That doesn't answer the question. So what you're saying is there's been an increase, but that doesn't answer the question as to whether there is going to be an increase. So
There has been an increase because everyone post-COVID is a little bit broken.
yeah,
Like we've seen it in the retail space, people get angrier quicker over smaller things, and I'm sure that's the case elsewhere as well. People get pissed off in traffic. It's just something we haven't dealt with before.
yeah, no, 100%. Let's just give Mikey the last 30 seconds, and there's one other thing I want to add to this as well.
Is expected to capture between 45 and 90 extra prisoners each year at a cost of $11 million annually.
Well, that's not true, actually. It says that they're going to catch between 45 and 90 extra prisoners. No, because they would have been caught anyway. Because if you're getting caught to suffer the third strike, then you're caught. So it's not going to catch more people. It's going to punish harder the people on the third thing. So I'm pretty sure what Mikey just said there was wrong. Let me just go back. We'll give it, unless I misheard. Sounds like she was saying that there'd be more people caught. No, this won't catch more people. This will punish the ones that are being caught. Nothing in this legislation talks about how they're going to catch more people. Let's just check that again.
The legislation is expected to capture between 45 and 90 extra prisoners each year at a cost of
She said capture, not catch, meaning it's going to affect. I withdraw and apologise.
$11 million annually, a price the Prime Minister says is worth it in the interests of protecting victims.
We think we will be compliant with BORA and also with international human rights obligations, but that'll ultimately be a decision for the Attorney-General to see when legislation comes to the House.
Legislation that'll be sure to spark plenty of debate. Mikey Sherman.
So here's the other thing, Chewy. This is a little bit of a side note. I watched some of that press conference, and at one point, the Prime Minister was asked, now you check out this wording, right? I haven't got the clip, but I'll tell you what it is, and if I need to find it, I will. Was asked about cutting frontline staff, right? And about, you're not going to cut frontline staff. And the Prime Minister said, and I'm quoting him, and I can remember it, he said, no, it's not that we're not going to cut frontline staff, it's that we're not going to cut frontline services. So that's what he said in the press conference this afternoon, that it wasn't about staff, it was about services. So what that means, and we could look back to the more prison officers there's going to need to be for this, that they might just try and service the front line with fewer people. And it was very clear when he was asked about frontline staff, he says no, frontline services. So that's what the government's saying, and I think it's something we need to keep an eye on.
I think that goes hand in hand with the announcement from Customs today. Customs is going to be shedding some staff from border security. The very definition of our front line. I forget how many that they're cutting, but they're cutting staff from Customs.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, we're going to keep rolling tonight, guys, because there's a lot to get through, and also there's a bunch of people doing super chats. What we want to say, so thank you for them. Frosty for $5 would love to become a patron, however, can't afford it, so have these $5 instead. Yeah, look, and I just want to echo what Chewy said. We don't want anyone to put themselves out to a point where they can't afford. Like, there are other ways that we can get income. One is by watching. I mean, it's like 0.0001 cent a view, but YouTube gives us a small amount of money from this, and other people doing this sort of thing. And as I said before, we are looking to bring on some advertisers. So I don't ever want people to feel like they feel obliged to do this. We're just inviting people that if you are able to and want to, if you've seen enough of us to think that we are worth putting a few bucks behind to add to the storehouse for the greater good for everybody. That's kind of what we're saying. And like, as we've said, share our shit around. Be our advocates. That's I think that's as valuable, if not more valuable. Mr. Arvid says, on the topic of Seymour, I heard he is the worst person ever. This is going to be a running gag now, isn't it? For $5. Thank you, Mr. Arvids. Appreciate that. Nate for $10. Thank you, sir. Some extra funding to get the good word out there. Hashtag Seymour is the worst example of a human. All right. I can see you guys are taking off with your own bits and bobs there. Gold says, speaking to Mr. Arvids, I disagree. I heard that the leader of ACT was the worst example of a human being. I feel kind of left out that this is happening in the background. Daniel says, once my $25 a fortnight comes through from Krista Luxon and co, hopefully I can afford to patron. Very good. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, when you all get your millions of dollars of tax cuts, we can look at it then. It's in the ballot. 3 strikes law is a vote from the legislator of no confidence in the judiciary, removing its independence. Yeah, because we've heard that as well from the legal fraternity saying if a judge no longer has discretion in sentencing, that can actually be a problem as well. You know, there's often reasons why there's discretion. Kiwi Bird says, Citizen Gold, I heard David Seymour is intellectually dishonest and engages in bad faith. How are we ever going to get David Seymour on team?
I have heard that.
I've heard that as well.
I have heard that. Well, we can do what Mike Hoskins does, right? We can go, some of our viewers think this.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, actually, he does that all the time. Seymour does it all the time. Lots of New Zealanders believe when he's trying to sell one of his points. And Gold for $2, thank you for the super. It just says it's not a gag. I'm sure it's not. Right. Anything to add to that yet, Chewie?
No, let's keep rolling.
Yeah, okay. My little dog's standing outside my door trying to get him. I have to go and get her when I play this first clip. David Seymour. And look, I wasn't actually going to play this first part of the conversation. I was going to get straight to what Chlöe had to say because they're talking about the Waitangi Tribunal here. They're talking about Karen Chichihoho being invited, being summoned to the Waitangi Tribunal and her basically just not having a bar of it. And now the government, I believe, is going to court to say they don't have to go. It's a weird thing because they're really clear in the tribunal, the Waitangi Tribunal is not a court. I don't know if it can summon you legally sort of thing, but they're now going to court to make sure that they don't summon you. It's a bizarre thing. Anyway, I am going to play the first little bit of David Seymour because as we always say, he always plays the race card. He always plays the race card. And in this little 60 seconds, I just wanted to play it for you because the first thing he does in defending why they shouldn't speak to the Waitangi Tribunal is play the race card. I'll be back in a moment while you're watching this. I'm going to go get my dog.
Well, first of all, let's be clear. The Waitangi Tribunal is not a court. Karen Chlöe is a minister who's been part of a government that's been elected. She's going through the process of making a policy, taking papers to Cabinet and ultimately introducing a law to Parliament. That law will stop things like the reverse uplifts where a kid gets put in a home for life and then gets taken out because the Oranga Tamariki decided it was sometimes more important that you're in a house with a particular race than one where you're safe. I mean, that's how despicable this law has been. Karen's getting rid of that.
What an absolute idiot!
Would argue, and they're going to argue this in court today or something along these lines. That actually, as a government, we have a right to make policy without being hauled in by this tribunal, which is not a court. They should be respecting our part of the world, just as we should be respecting theirs.
Which they're absolutely not. He says we should be respecting theirs whilst we sit here and actively disrespect it, which is utterly, utterly redonkulous. Sorry, you go.
The false equivalence that he just drew between there of them trying to balance being in a house of their own culture or family versus, and it just a black and white choice here, or being safe.
Yeah,
because you've got to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Now I know the case that he's trying to score political points off, and it's a shit show. Like, it's a really challenging case, and I don't think it has been handled particularly well. And it's kids that are bouncing between an organization that was at that point going through a seismic shift of like maybe us taking brown kids off their family and giving them to white families more often than not is not a great thing to do. So maybe we need to do more consideration about placing people with whānau. But yes, again, if you're brown, dangerous.
It's so stupid,
dangerous
though.
For kids.
It's so stupid. Like, let's just when you take Māoridom out of the equation, you make it a different equation, right? Then it's really, you can see when it falls apart. So okay, let's just do that. Let's just say you had French migrants to New Zealand, right? Let's just say that the 7-year-old from the French migrants only spoke French, right? Would it be better? Would that child likely be better understood, better communicated with all these things? And I'm not talking about kids only speaking Māori. I'm talking about a similar culture. If that child was then put for care and with a New Zealand family that didn't know anything about France, didn't know anything about the language, didn't know anything about the culture, or is it likely they'd be better, have a better chance of success going in with a family at the very least who knew a lot about France and knew a lot about the culture and knew how parents and children interacted? Well, of course, we know the answer. It's redundant. But as soon as you're in New Zealand and you can't see that perhaps a Māori child would do better with a Māori family, if you try and say that, well, that's just by their race, as soon as you take that argument and replace it like I've just done, you can see how nonsensical it is. There's a way that these families, yes, they're all Kiwis, we're all the same, but you know what? We function differently. The household runs differently. There's different expectations from a European with a European-centric kind of family value or family operating system than there is from a Māori one. It's just how it goes. So what's the problem?
It's also completely ignoring what has happened in New Zealand historically and overseas historically, where in colonial countries there was a real run of taking Indigenous kids off their families, who of course couldn't fucking raise them according to the colonial state, and given to white families. You've got an entire generation of stolen children in Australia.
Stolen generation, yeah.
Yeah, like literally stole it. Here in New Zealand, would just take Māori kids off their families and put them in a borstal. And that's how we gave birth to our gang problem.
Yeah.
Like just a generation of broken, damaged kids raised in abusive state institutions. And I think for him to just write that off of like, well, this government department is just giving this namby-pamby woke consideration to the ethnic background of these kids, rather than making sure that they're safe. You can do both. That's my expectation, is that you weigh those two things together. It's not a black and white dichotomy.
Yeah.
Like if you read the story, I think it was News Hub that put it out about this case, about like there were some kids that were uplifted. They were siblings, and there was they were going to split them up because who can foster? I think it was 4 or 5 kids in one hit. There's not many people out there, and a family put their hand up, and they did, and they were an English family, but they were very conscious of the fact that they were Māori children and they were going to reach out to the local marae, and they sounded like they were going to put in all the effort. And then down the track, they found some family members that offered to take them. Now that for any case manager, that's a terrible choice to make. And it sounds like Oranga Tamariki absolutely fumbled that process. And left everybody feeling completely shithouse. Things were said. It's a dog's breakfast. But this is the thing, that it's a complicated situation. If you fuck it up, you ruin a life. Well, you ruin several lives. You know, somebody is going to be put out. And I think to have David Seymour wading into something like that with all the tact and understanding that he lacks, and he's just going to go, I'm going to make points off the racial element here. He is the worst person. He is.
I've heard that somewhere.
Every time he's the worst person.
All right. Well, let's get back to the story now. Chlöe is asked about Karen Shaw, and quite an easy question, quite a simple question from Lloyd Burr. But Lloyd just basically goes, should she just have gone to the Waitangi Tribunal? Like just gone along rather than making such a big hubbub? And that was a question to prompt this part of the conversation.
I mean, that would be entirely in line with the doctrine of parliamentary supremacy. The kind of hot take that I'm getting from all of this is that the government is terrified of accountability. They have been legislating incredibly quickly without all too much kind of opportunity for public participation. So let's just get a few facts straight. So the Section 7AA came into effect in 2017. Actually, David voted for it, as did Dr. Parmjeet Palmer, who gave a speech in support of it at third reading. And that inserted not the kind of things that David's talking about with regard to uplifts, but commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi and reporting requirements for the Chief Executive of Oranga Tamariki.
So this is really important. The 7AA, as far as I understand it, one of the biggest things about it is the CEO needs to write reports based on how the kids are being looked after. So a big part of this is just what it is a way to measure how they're going. That's a big part about 7AA. I don't think I show it in this clip, but it does say it in this conversation. And I just think, once again, the government, as I think Chlöe just said, is kind of scared of being of accountability. All the things that they've cancelled and all the things that they said they'll no longer do, and all the looking at information, getting assessments on the information, they're going to ignore all of that stuff. And this, to me, seems like, and I've asked for some professional help to come on and explain more to us about 7AA, but it seems like a big part of it is the CEO being accountable for what's happening, especially when it relates to inclusion of the contractual agreement the Crown has with Māori, reporting on that. And that's what they're getting rid of. So therefore, there will no longer have to be any kind of accountability from the CEO. There'll no longer have to be any kind of reports made about what's happening with this contractual agreement, the founding document of our nation, between Māori and the Crown. So I don't think we get that in full from the clips I've showed you, but I kind of wanted you to know based on my understanding. So anything, Chlöe, or should we keep going?
No, keep rolling.
Tamariki. So if they have concerns about how that's being applied, we should have that debate and we should have that evidence in the public arena. The Waitangi Tribunal is a place to do that. Another thing to note is that the reason that Karen Shah has been summoned in front of the Waitangi Tribunal is because she refused to participate in giving them any written or oral evidence voluntarily. So again, there is an opportunity here for meaningful accountability, for public discussion, for evidence to be aired, and for us to have a rational debate about how we legislate moving forward and what commitment to Te Tiriti o Waitangi looks like. Because this is about reducing disparities for Māori children in state care. The other point...
Look at David Seymour's face. I know you don't want to, but just the kind of eye-rolling, smirking, shaking of his head, the dismissive nature. I've actually got a clip later on, and it's I've titled it Seymour patronising Chlöe again and playing the race card again. It's just... if these two were having a debate at school, he would be not just second, he'd be about 9th out of 2 people. He doesn't ever offer anything, any form of valid conversation based around evidence or research. It's always vibes. And just how he's even acting right now, it's just revolting. It's revolting.
Do you know, like, this is a great comparison between him and Chlöe, right? Just it doesn't matter the subject; it's always the same. Chlöe has to speak rapidly.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's got such a short amount of time to express like quite complex concepts and provide their context.
Yeah.
So she goes hell for leather.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we cross to Seymour, who can speak very slowly because he's just talking about vibes, and these things don't come into it. And people have told me, and people feel this. He doesn't have to. He's not imparting complex ideas. He's not putting things in its context. He doesn't have to do what Chlöe has to do. He doesn't have to work hard to be a shitty person. It can just flow sedately like a river of bullshit.
In fact, I've heard he's the shittiest person on the face of the planet from some people. Let's just get to the end of this clip.
That I would make is that, look, those who are advocating to retain Section 7AA in place are the Children's Commissioner, survivors of abuse in state care, many experts, and those on the front line. On the other side, you have National Actor New Zealand First.
What do you...
That would be called a mic drop. If I didn't value my equipment so much,
I just
pick it up and I just drop it. Yeah, and that's often what's happening, isn't it? You go to the experts, the people in the field, the advocates, the people who are involved with it, and you're like, they all say the opposite from what you're saying. National Act, New Zealand First government. What does that mean? There's never really an answer for that. But any thoughts, Chlöe, before we go on to the next clip?
No, I got all of my thoughts out.
So in this next clip, David Seymour was trying to sell the point that is the tribunal trying to be a part of the legislation system. So he's trying to make the point that, they're actually nobodies. The tribunal means nothing. We're elected, we make the law. They actually aren't a part of the system. This is only a 30-second clip, so let's just have a listen to what he's got to say.
I mean, Chlöe is not seriously proposing a system of government where you get elected and then you have to be accountable to the Waitangi Tribunal. That's not how New Zealand works.
Only when you start removing Waitangi from legislation, that's their role.
Intention. Well, actually,
so he was being talked over, but the point Lloyd made was, if you're taking Treaty of Waitangi out of legislation, that's when you should go and talk to the Waitangi Tribunal, because what's going to happen when you take it out is they're going to then challenge it and take you to court to try and get it put back in. So Lloyd's actually right here, and Chlöe agrees with Lloyd, where he says, no, unless you are removing Treaty of Waitangi from legislation, Treaty of Waitangi obligations from legislation, then yes, they're going to want to talk to you. And David Seymour just talked over him the whole time and refused to kind of say it because, Waitangi Tribunal, who cares? They weren't elected.
No, it's not. It's not their role to tell us how to govern. We're an elected government. The Waitangi Tribunal was created by an elected government to do certain things, and it was never anticipated that they would become an accountability mechanism for ministers, where ministers could be called in and forced to explain themselves. And
it's not necessarily what they're doing right now. They're looking for a clue. Oh, did I forget to have it on the screen? Sorry, I was looking two ways. Did I not have that up when I was playing? Just the audio, was it?
Yeah.
My bad. We'll get the next one anyway. But there you go. So Seymour's trying to say, well, they're not allowed to tell us what to do. We've been elected, they haven't. And Lloyd pointed out, sorry, it was Lloyd talking if you couldn't see the pictures. Lloyd pointed out that when you remove obligations relating to the Treaty of Waitangi from legislation, then they're going to get involved. And David's response is, meh, we're not going to talk. We don't have to talk to them.
Well, Peter makes a good point in the chat here. Section 3 of the Treaty of Waitangi Act. This act shall bind the Crown.
Yeah.
So, does it, David? David?
Yeah. And the very last clip I've got for you, it's mostly actually just because there's this rumor going around the BHN chat that David Seymour is the worst person in the world. And so let's just show you a little part of the patronizing nature that is known as David Seymour.
Secondly, Chlöe says, there's no data, there's no evidence. I'm the only one with data and evidence. Well, here's the question. Well,
we want it in the public arena.
That's a summary of what you say every week. Now, basically,
smarmy
the
cock.
question is, how many kids being taken out of safe homes and being put out of violent ones would be an acceptable number? If you want data and evidence, I'm sure you can get it. But here's a principle. Every kid should be treated with the same love and respect regardless of race. And that's what this government is committed to.
The point of Section 7AA, by the way.
How much?
So that's the whole, what we're just saying. So David Seymour literally says, well, we can all find data and evidence, but this is the feeling, which is exactly coming back to the point that this government, and in particular David Seymour, as we've seen get shown up so often on these morning shows, run from data, mostly because most research seems to disagree with it. I mean, he literally just said that, we've all got evidence, but this is what it feels like.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, again, he doesn't understand the history. He doesn't understand what it's trying to achieve. He doesn't care what this is. This is a political, race-baiting, point-scoring mechanism for him. It is not about the kids. It is not about the victims. It is not about safe homes or anything like that. Not for David Seymour. Just points. Just debating points.
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're going to go on to the conversation that I think will get Chewy. So Whānau, Chewy, don't listen. Whānau, Chewy's going to get real grumpy soon, and it'll be fun to watch, and it's coming up shortly with the Israeli ambassador. Okay, you can come back, Chewy. I'm finished talking to people. Okay. Let's say, you're getting ready, are you? Thank you, Mike. He's sharing his tax cut with us for $2. Appreciate that. Kiwi Bird for $2. Appreciate that. How much would it cost to summon David Seymour? Maybe we could do that.
I think a goat. I think we'd need to go. Oh, you probably mean an email, not an actual summoning a demon.
Mr. Arvids, Seymour is a debate lord piece of shit. Oh my fucking God, I hate him, says Mr. Arvids. So I like it. Do you know what we've realised? And did we say this the other day? This is like a counselling session, but I think it's a counselling session for the people watching as well. They get to scream at their TV what they'd like to scream in their co-workers' faces, but realise it's perhaps a little bit the wrong place to do it. And finally, thank you very much, Marie, a very generous super chat, $20. Pat and Shuey, you are awesome. I'm happy to be a patron and contribute. Thank you for all you do and for telling it like it is. Thanks, mate. We appreciate that, and that's very generous of you. Yeah, well, we love this HOA. I mean, let's be honest, we don't really know what else we'd be doing. What if you had a week off? What would you be doing? Honestly, it'd be weird. You'd be judging at the Fringe Festival or something, wouldn't you?
That was last. Like, I'm always judging. It's just what I'm judging.
And there's one more here before we roll on to the next topic. So I heard David Seymour is worse than the worst example of humanity. He's also anti-science. From Gold. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Appreciate that. Okay, I've noticed you've started a few things there. Is any other chats you want to get out there before we keep going, like that relate particularly to where we are at the moment?
What have I got here? Luchify says, the thing I love most about Chlöe is she doesn't talk down to us using one-line arguments, dog whistling, campaign slogans. Yeah, and when that's what she's up against, it's so clear-cut and obvious.
I think what you've just said about how fast she speaks and why, I think it's a really astute observation, Shuey. She goes 90 to the minute, is that what they say? Whatever it is. And because she has to, and it's a little bit like I love Hamilton, right? The stage show, not the place. I like the place as well. And because of Lin-Manuel Miranda's, the way he's written it, they reckon if that was spoken at the speed of most musicals or most stage shows, it would be about a 7-hour film. Because it's so quick and the words are so quick and it just goes through it, and it's all rapping and it's and he uses that many words. So like if an average play, a stage show is 25,000 words or whatever, his is 125,000, but it's fitted to a similar time frame because they just go at it so quick and so hard.
She reminds me of a couple of TV shows that I love, The West Wing and Newsroom, where people are always quite wordy, fast and quippy. Yeah, so she just needs someone a bit to quip off her, and it's not Seymour because he's very sleepy. And a lovely comment here. Thank you, Chewy, for mentioning the stolen generation. Most folks grown up in Aotearoa know of it, think it's an Australian thing. I've met folks that were displaced in Aotearoa. It's definitely happened here, and it's absolutely a missing piece of context that Seymour is so glibly happy to ignore.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. And just before we wrap up, Kenny Stead says, I actually heard Seymour as the worst.
See, more and more people are hearing this.
More and more people have told us. We're hearing this more and more often. That means it's official research now. Thank you for the super chat. Kenny's dead. Kenny's dead. Okay. Let's go and have a look. I think Chewy's just had his Seymour fill. Let's go and have a look at some of the conversation had over the weekend on Q&A between Jack Tame and the Israeli ambassador. We're going to start off by having a look. Oh, welcome back, sir. We're going to start off by having a look. This is probably the biggest chunk. This is like 3 minutes. And it's really trying to drill down. And what I did was I thought, oh, there's a good starting point. But then it went too long, the actual clip, and I found a different starting point within that conversation. So you really need to go and watch this whole thing yourself to get the full context, obviously. But we'll give you as much as we can as we go. This first part of the conversation is asking, is it a crime to bomb another country's diplomatic building? And it's based a little bit around, oh no, that's it. So this comes back to what happened in Damascus. And we saw that interview last week with the British journalist asking this sort of question. And this is where Jack also goes with the Israeli ambassador. From the Israeli ambassador, is it a crime to bomb another country's diplomatic building? And to be honest with you, the Israeli ambassador deflects quite a lot, as you'd probably expect. I mean, we might not get through the whole of this. We might just give it a minute or so and then move on because we've got a lot to get through.
Someone who has worked in diplomacy for many years now, Would you agree that it violates international norms for a country to bomb another country's diplomatic quarters?
I guess it's all a question of what is the purpose.
What?
If you refer to the bombing...
See, that's actually wrong already, because it doesn't matter what is the purpose. It's clear in the Geneva Convention you're not to do that. It's clear.
Oh,
in Damascus that Israel did not yet assume even responsibility for. And then it was a meeting of only military personnel, which by the Geneva Convention turns anything from hospital to a diplomatic mission into a legitimate military target. It wasn't the consulate. If you look at the pictures and people try to ignore it, the consulate, as we speak, still stands surrounded by a fence.
No, he's wrong. I've done a bit of research on this when I saw that. The embassy wasn't hit. The building next door is called the consulate. That was hit. I did have a link to it. I mean, anyway. So people have been saying the embassy was bombed. No. The embassy is still there, but the consulate was next to it, and that consulate was what was bombed. And either way, it was still on quote-unquote Iranian soil because it was a part of their compound.
And the building next door, outside the perimeter, that was rented by the Revolutionary Guards, is the one that was hit. And if people want to dwell into the Vienna Convention on diplomatic rights, it says that the hosting country needs to protect the premises of any diplomatic mission. The fact that it wasn't protected may mean that it wasn't a diplomatic mission, and the responsibility of the hosting country is Syria, not Israel. There's nowhere any text in any convention about a third party during war aiming at the headquarters of the enemy. And I think no one would deny the fact that Iran declared itself already 4 decades ago as the enemy of Israel, and the October 7 was basically an Iranian operation via a proxy.
How would Israel respond if what it considered to be one of its diplomatic premises was bombed by another country?
If it was used for perpetrating the killing of other people, or if it's just an innocent, honest-to-God diplomatic premises? This is the question.
So we'll leave that there because what he does now is he plays word games with it. And the thing that happens twice in this conversation, at least twice that I've got for you guys, is he has to go to a place because of his previous statement that you kind of go, oh, my bullshit nerve's going off. So what he's about to say is, yes, if Israel's building was a legitimate target, then that would be fair enough, which of course he doesn't believe. Not a million, but because he's just said that, he has to stick by that. That comes up again, Chlöe, when he's talking about using human shields, which we'll get to a bit later on. But look, I'm going to leave that part right there because there's still like 5 clips to go. You're already wowing in the background. What else do you want to
There's so much there. What an absolute twat. Okay, so military personnel in a group, no matter where that is, legitimate military target. Shall we talk about that, shall we? No, you can't bomb a military hospital.
Yeah.
That is something in the Geneva Convention very clearly. To say such a thing is just monstrous. Again, military staff in a US embassy, legitimate military target apparently. And we wouldn't do such nasty things with our embassies and diplomatic headquarters. The Mossad has been doing assassinations, justified or no, for as long as Israel's been around. They staged assassination hits out of their embassies hunting Nazis and so forth. The people that did the Munich Olympic Games attack. He's playing us for fools, and it's just such weak arguments. And he's got all of these things, of course, like it wasn't us that hit that building, but
we didn't say that. He said that Israel is yet to confirm, but he didn't quite say it wasn't us.
Yeah, we'll just shift these pieces around on the table and pretend we didn't do it.
Yeah,
what an absolute monster. And I know ambassadors have to stand up for the state and try and justify it, but this is disgusting.
Yeah. All right. Well, get ready to get more disgusted. So this part of the conversation, they've just come from a chat where they were making the Israeli ambassador was making a justification for death in war, saying it saves lives in the future. So I'm paraphrasing because there's not enough time to show you everything, that they've just talked a little bit about how, for example, civilians die, that sort of thing. And yes, that happens in war and all wars, but what you're trying to do is protect lives in the future. And obviously he wasn't talking about Palestinian lives, but that's what's just happened before this part, just to give you a bit of context. And then we go on with it from here.
So, Ambassador, if we should be thinking about the lives that will be saved in the future when we think about the justifications for Israel's incursion, are you saying that under that thinking, Israel would theoretically be justified in killing every child in Gaza if ultimately that destroyed Hamas?
Absolutely not.
So where is the line?
The line is not
how far does the moral justification extend?
Let's agree on one thing.
No.
Once Hamas laid down their arms, more children will be saved on both sides, more civilians, and the region at large will come down. Everything will de-escalate.
I will agree.
So
I will agree with that point. I will agree with that point if you will agree with mine, and that is that Israel still has agency. Yes, Hamas might use the civilian population for barbaric purposes. Mm-hmm. It might shelter within civilian communities. But ultimately, Israel is still the one hitting the button, deciding to discharge a 2,000-pound bomb in one of the most densely populated communities in the world. It is still an Israeli munition that is blowing apart a child's body, tearing limbs off it, that is destroying buildings, that is crushing people. Israel has agency in these decisions.
Absolutely. And those decisions are examined before, during, and after by legal experts who are specialized in international law and the law of warfare.
Really?
And
yes, Joey?
He needs to get better experts. But the article that I read that said that they're using AI to designate targets with very little human oversight.
Interesting. You still there? Oh, Chewie might have frozen. Right, let's keep going with the interview.
And you have to always consider the right of self-defense. And we claim this is part of our right of self-defense. The idea that we have a right to kill everyone is definitely wrong. And it's not our idea. But the idea that we have
killed so many thousands of innocent people?
Why?
Yes, why?
Because for the reason Hamas is hiding under them, not even among them sometimes, because that they choose schools, community centers to shoot rockets from. Now, to stop those rockets, do we have or don't we have, in order to stop rockets from being shot from a school, a UN compound, to shoot back, or are we supposed to die?
Ambassador, no one is defending.
One thing that I was left with this conversation, Chewie, is how much of the victim card the ambassador played all the way through. I don't know where exactly would fit on, kind of the world stage when it comes to military might, but it must be top 10. Israel must be top 10, even though it's little, for military might, because they're funded by and supplied by the US. I don't know if that's fair or not, but they're not going to be not top 1 or 2, but they'd be up there in the top 10, 15 in the world. And in other words, far more powerful than Gaza and some of those smaller areas around them. But what I got from this conversation was so much was played as the victim card. But what about? But did you see this? But what happened to us? But what about Israeli children? But what about, a lot of that all the way through this conversation was me going, you're talking about Israel like it has no agency, speaking to what Jack said before, like it's the ones that are suffering the most here. There's some horrific atrocities have been committed against Israel in the last 6 months. We all know about that. We've talked about that. But that's still being a justification for now killing 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, whatever it's going to end up being, the number, and still playing the victim card for what happened on that day. That's a big part of what I took away from this whole conversation.
There's no equivalence here. Israel is the big military power in the region. They are the most technologically advanced military power in the region. You know, a peer state launched a massive drone and missile barrage on Israel just last week, and nothing got through.
Yeah.
Nothing. They're drawing an equivalency for Hamas firing homemade, bodged together
rockets.
Mad Max rockets from an area smaller than Auckland, and as a justification for flattening every hospital, for letting people starve, for not supplying power or water, for drone striking children and aid workers with just such reckless, unrestrained abandon that any victim card here has flown out the window.
Yeah.
They have the high ground. They can show restraint. They can show devastating tactical pinpoint accuracy when they want to. And this has been my whole thing through this response that Israel's come. There is no restraint. There is no pinpoint. There is no... It's just devastating and indiscriminate. And I think here we are 4 months in. You can't call it anything else but ethnic cleansing. Because what's happening here in Gaza is monstrous. There's also bullshit happening on the West Bank as well. You know, the rate of attacks on Palestinians has increased. The rate of evictions and the closing down of neighborhoods has increased. Those two things are linked. Like this isn't a proportionate response.
Yeah.
This isn't the big dog going, you know, you can throw some punches and we'll take it and we'll choose the time for our response.
And what Jack does very well in this is they talk about the proportion. He goes, the Israeli ambassador goes, what do you expect? We should go into a party in Gaza and kill 327 people there, and we should go into the houses in one area and kill 1,000 people there. Like, but the point that Jack's already made, and you heard it in the last conversation, and continues to make is, okay, but what is a fair number? Like, what do you think? Because at the moment it's like 1,500, 2,000 versus 40,000. So at what point is that going to be an okay? Like, what point does it get to be not okay anymore? Let's play this next part, and I'm going to skip the rest of that last conversation, so you'll need to go and check it out for yourself, because you mentioned famine, and they ask about that. They ask about the famine, and he sort of he doesn't quite say it's a lie. There's no famine, but he does put some caveats around it.
So if Israel has acted so responsibly, how do you explain the famine?
I don't think there is famine at large. There are a few pockets. A few pockets of famine. Yes. I can show you clips and
from the north to the south of Gaza, that kind of pocket. That's the pocket that there is.
Videos of the markets in South Gaza, in North Gaza, where the IDF has asked people to evacuate. The UN is incapable, simply incapable. There are, as we speak now, and maybe on the weekend there will be more, there are over 700 trucks in Gaza, parked within Gaza, that Israel has authorized with food, waiting for the UN to disperse. The UN is incapable of dispersing this food in the same rhythm it has entered. And it has doubled itself from the beginning of the war, because it's a learning cycle.
Perhaps aid workers don't want to be in Gaza because they don't trust they won't be bombed by the IDF.
We had only one case in which we made a mistake. We admitted it immediately after investigation.
3 times!
And the second day after, joint command for the aid agencies, the IDF and the UN, was constructed on ground to coordinate those convoys. There is no book that I know of where you can get instructions.
Now he just basically goes on to say, oh, this is a hard war. There's never been anything like it. It's not like Donald Trump. Never been anything like it. And tries to explain away why that actually
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, we've only made one mistake. I mean, it was 3 mistakes over an hour and over 3 kilometers. Like you read about those aid workers getting hit, and you tell me that was a mistake. You tell me that Israel has so many drones and with such good cameras and night vision over that area all the time, and you can't tell me that they can't identify an aid convoy. You can't tell me that they can't identify 11 children in a playground as a legitimate military target.
Yeah, because you can't have it both ways, can you? Because they talk about, in this interview, he talks about our world-leading technology, and he does say in this week we're being restrained because we could have just, flattened Gaza at any stage. Like, he says that. And like you say, you can't have it both ways. You can't be world-leading, you can't have all this technology, you can't be precise in what you're trying to do and blow up a playground with children playing in it. You can't have it both ways. You either say we're troglodytes with the technology of the caveman and we made mistakes, or you say we're precise so much that we can defend what we're doing and then not blow up playgrounds. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that, oops, that was a mistake, but we're very precise and we do this. No. You can't have, it doesn't work. It's all or nothing.
The only weapons we have are unguided 2,000-pound gravity bombs. We can't really control where they go. Come on, man. You just don't want to spend the GPS guided weapons on playgrounds.
Yeah. Hey, let's get to the last part of this that we're going to have a look at tonight. As I said, just go and watch the whole thing. I encourage you to. They were talking about children who survive. So the children who survive this, what does the Israeli ambassador think that they're going to be like in the future? Like, because they're talking about, if Hamas lay down their arms, everyone would be safe, But Jack just says, well, what about the kids who have seen their parents and family and friends, blown apart by Israel? How are they going to be? Now, I'm going to play this in 2 parts, and I'm not actually going to give you his answer, because Jack asks the question, and then he goes into a long-winded, waffly story about him being in a restaurant that had a suicide bomber, and he doesn't hate the people who did the suicide bombing. He doesn't answer the question, so we're going to play this short clip, and then I'm going to jump straight to the point where Jack actually asks him the question again because he hasn't answered the question. So let's have a listen to the question to start with.
But absolutely vital to the future is somehow breaking the cycle of violence. You would agree with that, right?
How do we do that?
So I just want to understand, why won't Israel's response and approximately 34,000 deaths, approximately 13,000 children's deaths, ultimately lead to more terrorism against Israel?
Because the radical elements need to be replaced by those who have managed to accept the neighborhood with Israel, because the claim that Israel has no right to exist will always create the next generation trying to erase Israel.
Again, though, to my question, how will bombing Gaza stop people from becoming radicalized in the future? If you are, just imagine for a moment, you are a child.
We're not bombing Gaza.
Did you get that?
What?
Yeah, we're not bombing Gaza. Let's just play that again. Let's play it again.
With that,
How
right?
do we do that?
So I just want to understand, why won't Israel's response and approximately 34,000 deaths, approximately 13,000 children's deaths, ultimately lead to more terrorism against Israel?
Because the radical elements need to be replaced by those who have managed to accept the neighborhood with Israel, because the claim that Israel has no right to exist will always create the next generation trying to erase Israel.
Again, though, to my question, how will bombing Gaza stop people from becoming radicalized in the future? If you are, just imagine for a moment, you are a child.
We're not bombing Gaza.
Seeing, and you have seen destruction from Israeli munitions, you have seen family members, innocent family members killed. Why wouldn't you become radicalized?
Can I share a personal story?
If you answer that question, please, Ambassador.
And there he goes to tell the story about being in a shop with a suicide bomber, and shares his expressions of how he doesn't hate that person and doesn't hate the whole race because one of his friends was killed and he wasn't killed. But then Jack asks the question again. This is only 45 seconds, and we'll just let this play through.
doesn't explain. Doesn't answer my fundamental question. My fundamental question is, why will a child who survives an experience whereby their entire community is destroyed, where they have innocent family members killed by Israeli munitions, why will they not hate Israel in the future? And I think that is a fundamental question that remains unanswered. I have a couple more questions for you, Ambassador.
Answers, because I know of children, including my mother as a Holocaust survivor, who managed to grow out of her pains and anguish and live a full life.
She didn't have a Nazi state
and make peace
which she was living next door to anymore, did she?
She chose not to, but many Jews chose to.
There was not a Nazi state that existed after the Second World War.
But there was
this is the point, and there will be Gaza. Gaza will exist.
I hope so.
Reporting.
Now I want to just repeat what was just said there, because Jack Tame says there will be a Gazan state, and the ambassador says, I'll play it again for you, says, I hope so. Maybe. I think so. I think those are 2 words. Let's have a listen again.
But there was
this is the point, and there will be Gaza. Gaza will exist.
I hope so.
I hope so. I guess so is the answer from the Israeli ambassador to there will be a Gaza continuing after this. I do have one more clip, Chlöe, but you're welcome to have a crack right now. The next clip is only like 25 seconds, and that's the last clip.
One of the things that is always the case when someone wants to downplay what's going on, right, is they focus down onto the current thing. Like this Hamas attack that happened in October came out of nowhere. There's no need for it, that sort of thing. Like the timeline of what Israel has done here, like there's no debate. There's no reason to debate it. This is monstrous what they've done, their actions, the amount of incidences and accidents that have happened.
There's only one. That's what they said. There's only one.
The random shootings, the reports of people being run over with bulldozers, the fact that every single hospital has been flattened. This is the only way that this solves the problem for Israel is if they expel or kill everyone in Gaza.
Yeah.
There's enough evidence to show that that's what they're trying to achieve. And this October attack, even the things that they said about that, there's been so much that they stoked people's outrage over that has been disproved.
The beheaded babies. Yeah.
The fact that a lot of people from that music festival were killed by Israeli helicopters. It's I can't trust what Israel says at any point. There is so much doubt. There have been so many lies. There's been so much disseminating about what's going on. Why would we believe them at all at any stage? And I think that the fact that I threw in, I was just Googling stuff like Palestinian Air Force, because it's the Israeli Air Force that are doing these bombing missions, right? So the Palestinians should be putting up some defense. Oh, they don't have one. Palestinian tanks, they don't have any. A war is when 2 armies are fighting.
Yeah.
There's only one here, and it's they profess that they're trying to get the hostages out. But there's a non-stop bombing campaign, and if someone sticks their head above ground, they get drone strike. Like how many? We'll find out. The truth will come out. How many hostages have died?
Yeah.
From the Israeli response.
But you know what they'll say, won't you? The Israelis will say.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. No. Absolutely. But you can sum up this whole thing, what the Palestinians have been dealing with Israel, with an image that you can find from multiple decades, and it's frighteningly the same. There are versions of this with different tanks from different places and different times, but this is the same image over and over and over again of a kid chucking a stone at a tank, because that's what they've got. But this ambassador is making my blood boil.
Well, there's one more to come.
This is again why I can't be a politician, because I would have watched this, phoned up the embassy and said, pack your shit and get out and take the Russian ambassador with you.
I think, and I've obviously cut it as a part of I didn't mean to, but there was another part of this conversation where they were talking about human shields, and Jack says to the ambassador, if a terrorist used a child of yours, your child, as a human shield, and the response from the police was to kill both people, how would you feel about that? And of course, because he got stuck in the cycle of saying that you should, you know, if human shields are being killed, it's Hamas's fault, he had to say, which obviously the bullshit nerve goes off. He had to say, no, you know, if it was, as someone who's been in the military, if it was a just, you know, action, then I would accept it. Yeah, good one. But he actually said that in the interview as well. But the last part I'm going to play for you is actually something more. This clip played on the news as well. Let me play it first and then I'll ask you the question. I'll just play it first and then I'll ask you the question. This is the last 25 seconds that we're going to show.
I know there are calls here to not take sides. Those times are over. New Zealand needs to take a side. Are they with the like-minded or not?
I agree with
the like-minded or not? Are you with the coalition or not? And to what extent? This is an internal decision. But sitting on the fence, when it comes to world peace, and it's not Israel that denies the world from its peace.
So if he's saying to New Zealand, it's time for New Zealand to choose a side. And my question, I guess, is if New Zealand was forced to take a side, which side would they pick? I know, I'll leave it at that before I pontificate. Which side would New Zealand pick? Because he might be surprised.
The state of Israel is not a friend of New Zealand. Like, we've expelled their ambassador before, and we expelled their entire diplomatic mission because it was Mossad agents stealing the identities of dead New Zealand children so they could create trusted passports to do their work around the world, which put every New Zealander that travels under a New Zealand passport at risk. And when they were caught, Helen Clark booted them all out. Israel is not a friend to New Zealand. And we don't need, like, if we have to pick, if someone says you need to pick a side, and that's the person telling you that is the person that is basically carpet bombing a city full of children, then my instant reaction is, yes, we do need to pick a side. It's not yours.
And as Paula said very clearly there, you've said Israel is not our friend, Paula says, and the state of Palestine is not our enemy. And I guess the concern that would strike up straight away, and I can see it in the chat as well, when we say New Zealand has to pick a side, if that's the case, you have got a group of evangelical Christians at the top of the food chain in the New Zealand government at the moment. And if they're not evangelical Christians, they are evangelical Christian aligned, because that's who votes for them. Like Winston Peters, for example, I suspect would have a pretty good representation amongst his voters being evangelical Christians. Obviously, Christopher Luxon is one, as is a bunch of his cabinet. I think possibly David Seymour would be similar, that he'd have plenty of people in his voting base that was on that side of a religion, I guess. So that's the other concern, that if it was to pick a side now, who would they pick?
You know what I was thinking the other day, because I saw a clip of someone talk about the two-state solution, right?
Yeah.
And that's often held up as being the solution for this whole thing. If you look at a map of what that two states would be, that's an unworkable position for the Palestinians. They have two areas and no way to travel between them without going through Israel. And Israel's constantly nibbling away at the edges of the West Bank and putting up illegal settlements and all of that sort of stuff. So that's clearly not going to work. We've tried it. I almost think that the only way it would work is if you did something like what they did post-apartheid in South Africa, like the big truth and reconciliation sort of things, where they try to mend some bridges. But at the moment, all Israel's doing is blowing up anything even resembling the pieces of a bridge before it even gets built. Again, they are creating so many radicals. How the protests here in New Zealand, and the ones that I've seen here in Dunedin, the people that have got up and listed off the sheer amount of their relatives that are dead, the sort of weight that creates an immovable hatred or an absolutely crushing despair.
Yeah.
I can't even wrap my brain around it. So if Israel's going to the point of this is to secure Israel and make sure that this never happens again, they mean a genocide. And all the evidence is pointing towards that. They want to push people out of Palestine, out of the Gaza Strip, so they cannot come back, or they want to make sure that there's no survivors. And when that ambassador said we're not bombing Gaza, my brain went, we're bombing Israel. We're bombing an area of Israel that inconveniently has a lot of Palestinians living on it. You know, we're trying to solve that problem. Like, to bring up the international community, to drop in mention of the Holocaust ever so casually in this interview. Like, Israel has cruised off the fact that it was a Western outpost surrounded by Soviet client states throughout the Cold War. They were the bastion of democracy in an area that was very anti-West. But we have to look at their actions now and how they're behaving and go, these guys are not on our team. They don't stand for the things that we as an international community want to see.
Mm.
They lie. They lie. They distort. They don't show restraint.
Mm.
All of these things that we say, never again. And we're watching it in much higher definition than we've ever seen before. We're watching it happen again. So yes, in my opinion, we do need to pick a side, and it's not Israel. It's not the state of Israel. Their government is out the gates, and we haven't seen a lot of what the people of Israel think about this. Like, not a full representation. We've seen the hardliners, but the guys in Israel that are going, well, this is not my fight. There's nothing I can do about it. They need to get off the fence. They need to stand up and be counted that this is being done in their name.
It's funny you mentioned Truth and Reconciliation. The reason Truth and Reconciliation worked was because of a black leader in South Africa. That means if it was going to be parallel to what's happening now, it's actually got nothing to do with Israel. That would have to come from Palestine, because the stories about black South Africans forgiving, moving past, it was them who actually chose to kind of put down the utu to then move forward. I've already written down an email I did some work with a guy called Rob Harley, who used to be a TVNZ journalist, and he retells the story of a mother, and the mother is in the court, literally a Truth and Reconciliation, talking, I think, I'm going to try and get it and I'll play it tomorrow night, I think talking to like the white police officer who killed her son, and the stories told how the mother forgave and moved on, and that was the reason it worked. So if you mention that today, I straight away think that has to come from within Gaza. That has to come from the Palestinians, because that would be akin to it coming from South Africa, from the black South Africans. So it's a fascinating thought, Chlöe. It possibly is the only way that it could ever work, and that is for Palestinians to be able to forgive and move forward. As horrific as that sounds sitting here today, because again, the Palestinians, we're talking about the people. People have done nothing here other than get bombed. In that interview as well, the ambassador talked about, well, they elected them. And Jack was very good. He went, so did any of the babies elect them? Well, no, but, it's like actually the children who are being blown up and killed, did they elect them?
It's been over 10 years
2006,
since there was election in Gaza.
Nearly 20.
So we've spoken about this on the show before. With the majority of the population of Gaza is very, very young. So a big chunk of it had no chance to vote for anybody.
Yeah. No, 100%. So I'll try and get that audio and I'll play it for you tomorrow night. It's quite an emotional piece. And I used to work for a company that used to make little radio programs 90-second radio programs that would play around the country while like Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin were getting weather and traffic. So the other parts of the country, there was like a 90-second gap. And so the group I worked for made these 90-second radio programs, and this was one of them. So this is one of those 90-second radio programs. I've already put it down in an email to send off to someone, see if I can get it for tomorrow night, because that's really interesting. As soon as you see that, Chlöe, I'm just like, well, maybe that's the only way forward. And the hardest thing about that means it has to come from the Palestinians. It has to. That's how the reconciliation worked. So is it even possible?
And I think it's this thing where Israel needs to show restraint and the Palestinians need to show forgiveness, and then somebody needs to meet in the middle.
So we need Nelson Mandela.
And it's the only way that works.
Yeah.
And Netanyahu's not the guy, and the people around him are not the guys.
Yeah.
To show restraint, and who knows who's left on the Palestinian side, because they keep on assassinating them.
Yeah.
It's just the only way that there is peace in that region is they get back to realizing that they live in the same country. The idea of spinning up a country along, religious lines, when you had the idea of Zionism bubbling underneath everything, it is just like, guys, did you not see what was going to happen?
Yeah. All right. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Says New Zealand should recognise Palestine immediately. Yeah, but you really think that this leadership group are going to do that? And
I mean, in fairness,
yeah,
like Winston has said some stuff along the lines of something that we would agree with. It's not as strong, but he's being a diplomat. I can't be a diplomat, obviously.
House of M. I still come back to the Palestinians can get over it. My mum is a Holocaust survivor, and she got over it from the ambassador. Yeah, that was if you drop it in there, then what are you going to say? Okay, and then this is a random thought. I don't know where this has come from, but Rosen says David Seymour should be redacted. For $2.
You can insert your own word in there.
I'm just not sure where
you can create your own sentence.
I've never seen any of this kind of stuff before. A citizen for $5, thank you, says, I think Rimmer may have a challenger for the worst example of humanity. And finally, Nate, appreciate the super chat. Completely unnecessary PSA. Luxon is a cuck for the worst example of a human being. That is all. So thank you, Nate, for the super chat. We appreciate that. All right. You may or may not be interested in that little piece of audio that I've remembered tonight, but it's interesting to listen to. And actually, what is that saying about if we don't acknowledge our past, we're doomed to repeat it? That one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting to think about, because that's a pretty big conflict of cultures that had to find its own way forward. And I guess no one's suggesting it's perfect today or it was perfect for a long time, but they drew a line in the sand at some stage, and it would have to happen in that part of the world, Israel-Gaza. And I mean, who knows? How can you see it? You know what I think? Okay, so this is what I think. Netanyahu's got to go. Before that happens, there's no chance of anything else. So come on, we keep hearing that 73% of Israelis don't support what Netanyahu's doing. So vote the fucker out. And then let's reassess and get back and see what we can do from here on in. There you go.
If you look at Netanyahu's government, and I feel weird drawing these parallels, right? But Netanyahu's party didn't have enough support to form a government. So he recruited some supporting parties, basically from the hard right. And they've been given some pretty choice political appointments because of their support, and they are nutters.
Yeah.
So
it rings a certain bell, doesn't it? There's a certain familiar bell to the New Zealand politics, something that kind of rings quite true.
It does. And when you look at the things that Netanyahu has done to be in that position, like one of his political rivals got assassinated under some pretty sketchy, in a pretty sketchy sort of way. And there's questions over the funding of Hamas and how much money has come from Netanyahu's side, because Netanyahu needs an enemy to hold on to power. And that is a very traditional way for an unpopular leader to stay in power, is to create an enemy.
Yeah. All right. So just remember as well, we're hoping if anyone's got any ideas, because we're very much open to hearing the conversation around supporting a charity, helping Gaza. Doesn't have to be in Gaza, helping Gaza. Then bighearingnews@gmail.com in the next 24 hours. I hope that we're going to have hoodies and t-shirts available tomorrow night. I've done this design in the last kind of 36 hours. I like it. Do you like it, Chlöe? It looks all right, eh?
Yep. No, it looks good.
I think it's pretty clear what we're saying. It's so clear. I realized that when I had, so my little Apple Watch here has got, I think I showed you this last week. See the colors? Just as soon as you see those colors, you know exactly what's going on. So
yeah, and look, that idea of a buffer when we talk about supporting Māori just bolstering them in their fight, the same thing applies for the Palestinians.
100%.
When I see members of the Palestinian community here in Dunedin, so far from home, so split off from people in just the direst circumstances, and they look around and they see a whole bunch of New Zealanders who don't owe them shit.
Yep.
We don't, you know, why would they expect anybody to give up part of their Saturday to come and stand with them? That means something.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, and look, I think that maybe even though Professor Margaret Mutu gave us this idea about being a buffer for Māori, Chewy's exactly right. We can be buffers all over the place in areas that, like, I mean, you know, people react to this word, but as me and Chewy in particular, as privileged white men, you know, I'll happily, as much as we can, stand in the gap for people who are more vulnerable than us. And maybe next month it'll be a different one. Maybe it'll be a different cause next month. I don't know. But the idea of being a buffer just means, I guess, sitting out there and without trying to be having white savior complex or anything like that, but just kind of going, guys, we want to help. We want to help. We don't know how much to help, but we want to help. And the first thing we can do is show our help, or at least show our position out there in the mainstream. And we'll keep doing this. This buffer, I know that we have this thing with not repeating merch. But the buffer brand is here to stay, but it may just be different every month or so. So this week we're doing that, or this month we're doing that one. And yeah, we'll go from there and keep going, keep figuring it out. Alrighty. That's us for tonight. Well, there's so much we couldn't get onto tonight. I mean, just looking at the news and stuff at the moment, there's the government's going to court to not have to talk to the Waitangi Tribunal. It's like, you know, Mr. Luxon, for every dollar we want to spend, remember that whole conversation? Spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars so their ministers don't have to talk to the Waitangi Tribunal. It's just fucking ridiculous. Didn't really get into that tonight. Can do that as well. So we'll be back tomorrow night for some more, and we'll might have some more follow-up from these things as well. All right, team. All the best. We will catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hero News. Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate all the vibes, because that's what we operate off as well. And thank you to the people who have already signed up to be patrons. Remember, we're going to try our best to grow by 50 patrons this week. Don't know, that might be completely impossible, but you know, you got to put a number out there. And if you want to be a part of us, patreon.com/Big Hero News. Thank you, team. Love you to bits. We'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition. Hooroo.